Hi, welcome back to Analyze Scripts. We are so excited to analyze Love is Blind season 6, hot off the press, hot off the finale. I want to start by apologizing for my voice. I'm losing it a little bit. I don't really know why. All of a sudden, it just started going away like an hour before we were set to record. So I don't know if that's like a premonition. We'll
Yeah,
see.
like, what does that mean? Should we not be saying any of these things?
We're a little nervous to analyze a reality show, so we wanted to just talk a little bit about that. Luckily, I have some nice coffee in this golden goblet that
Mm.
I can sip on throughout our episode to maybe help, cleanse my palate. Cheers,
Yep.
Portia.
Cheers. Cheers to our Love is Blind season 6 castmates, whom only one
Made
went
it to
all the
the,
way.
yeah. I think that's like the worst odds yet,
Mm,
right?
I
So I
think
think
so.
that'll be interesting to talk about. Um, but before we get started, we did want to just, leave a little disclaimer here that, as legit mental health professionals, we want to be really careful and point out that we're not analyzing the actual people on this show. That would be wildly unethical since we have not evaluated them ourselves. But we do think, kind of like in our episode about the cults, that it's important to talk about the media that the world is talking about and consuming,
Mhm.
especially when we're seeing certain behaviors and I guess like interpersonal patterns being displayed that are problematic and
Yeah.
that some of us, if not all of us, will encounter in our real lives. So that's kind of why we chose this show. But we just want to be really careful and mention that, we're not going to be throwing out specific diagnoses about anyone. We'll leave that to our listeners to sort of
Mhm.
think about. But we do want to spend some time pointing out the interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, Katrina was also on a Bravo type podcast, and she
Oh,
was able to
like the
do The
best day of my
Housewives.
life.
Yeah.
It's like the birth of my children being on that podcast, it's like right
Mhm.
there. Like graduating med school might be above that, but not right now with what's going on with the Change Healthcare data breach.
Yeah. Yep.
Uh,
So we're also
a
trying to
little
not be a little
unhinged.
I was just gonna say that we're trying to do our best to not, be severely anxious or depressed or, all the other clinical terms we easily could meet
Yeah.
criteria for today. Um,
Yeah.
but here we are. So we're gonna talk about trash
Yeah.
TV, which is super fun to watch,
Oh,
escapism, what it does for us.
yes. And that
Um,
reminds me, you were just featured in an article all about what our favorite comfort shows say about us on
mhm,
Wonder Mind. So that's really exciting too.
yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks. Yeah.
Kudos.
So, I think Love
Cheers.
is Blind
Cheers
could
with
get
your
into that.
goblets.
Exactly. We're doing things, while not getting paid.
Right. If you know of a doctor or anyone, a therapist, anyone in the medical profession, maybe you want to check on them right now because the health insurance companies suck. They're not paying anyone right now. So, anyway, that's how I feel.
Yeah. So back to Love is Blind. I think we have a little bit of a outline that we wanted to stick to today.
Yeah.
Let's
So,
see.
I think the first thing we wanted to really think about is like, I was really curious, how do they pick these 30 people every season? Like, there must be some kind of formula because they keep replicating it.
Mhm.
And so I went to Google, as we do, and I found a really interesting article that I'll link to in our show notes all about how they do this. So basically, it sounds like the production company, I believe it's called Kinetic. Um, they like pick a city. I think that's really smart of them to pick a city and like try to find people from the same
Mhm.
location. So they like pick where they're gonna do the next season.
Yep.
Like even before, like they're probably already doing it for the next season as this one's airing, right? And they said that they start like looking at people's LinkedIn profiles, Instagram. They put the word out like everywhere somehow. They're just talking about,
They DM a
you
lot of
know,
people.
they DM a lot of people. The casting director, her name is Donna Driscoll. She says, like, we want everyone in the city to know, like, Love is Blind is here and we are casting. They want like as many people as possible. So that's sort of how they let people know like they're in town. And then they talk to over 2,000 people on the phone to interview them and narrow it down to 300 to 400 people that they then interview on Zoom. And she said, I'll quote her from this article, they look for more indicators that the applicants are ready for a committed marriage. Those indicators would be if they've done the work on themselves, healed from past relationships, truly understand what the meaning of love is, or have experienced what it's like to be in love. So I
That
think we can,
feels like a load of bull. to me.
Say more, Portia.
So I feel like, I mean, even just like, I think there's a type of person, and they're not good or bad. It's just a type of person who would want to be on a reality TV show. And now, like, we know what Love is Blind is. It's not season 1. I think there was something very special about season 1.
Yeah.
So we know what it is. People get more Instagram followers. I think you can do both. You can want love and be, mature, and you can also want fame. Like that absolutely can exist at the same time. But I
Right,
do
they're not
think that,
mutually
like,
exclusive.
no, and everyone has baggage. So to say that, like, they've done the work, it's like, how do you even quantify that? Like, what does that
Exactly.
mean?
Right, healed from past relationships.
Mhm.
I think we could all, like, really question that with season
Right.
6. Right, and I wanted to ask you, have you ever been approached to be on a reality show?
No. Have
I
you?
was. Yeah.
What?
No.
What?
I know. This is a long time ago. There was some show called, like, Are You the One? I think it was on MTV or something. I was already engaged, so this must have
So
been
you were not
early
JerAmey
residency.
or Trevor.
No. So I was at a bar with my very good friend, Amy. Shout out, Amy. She's a lawyer. She introduced me to my husband back in college. We were on the same tap dance team at Boston University, BU on tap. So, like, super
That's
cool.
adorable.
I know, we're so cute. But anyway, I was like visiting her in New York City because she was in law school in New Jersey. I was in Boston. So we met up for a weekend or something. Or no, I was in residency, whatever. I was in a bar with her in New York City. And someone comes up to us. We're just at the bar, right? And is like, hey, are you guys looking for love? And I was like, what is this? Like, I'm just so insanely curious and, like, interested in the process that I wanted to, like, know more. And I also, like, am dying to know, how do they evaluate people for these shows? So I kind of wanted to, like, go through it just to, like, really figure out, like, how do they do the psych evaluation, But she totally shut it down. And she, like, the girl was like, are you guys looking for the one? And Amy goes, we already have our ones. Like, we're good.
You're
We're
like,
good. And I could tell.
Stop.
I know. And I was like, wait, but I had, like, my engagement ring on, so it's clear, but, so anyway, yes, I have been approached.
That's wild.
So I'm going to add that to my
That's
CV.
cool. Yeah, you should.
Right. But, but anyway, so getting back to how does Love Is
Mhm.
Blind do it? So she also said, like, at the Zoom stage, they ask each applicant to fill out a nearly 300 question compatibility questionnaire. She says it's very detailed, and we have a background check and psych evaluation before anyone moves forward to the pod. And I want to get my hands on that questionnaire, and I want to see what's on it. Is it research based? Has it been evaluated in peer review? Have we done a double blind study to see, like, how accurate is this? What are
No,
your thoughts? Probably not.
That's a really good question. And I think the background check, there's been a lot of backlash. And I don't know who this is, and I should have looked it up, but, like, one of the former cast members, not from season 6, is suing. I don't know if it's
Yes.
the production company, Netflix, Love is Blind in general, because they are like, you did not do background checks. These, like, easily things. And again, like, everyone on social media, TikTok, Instagram, we can all look this up. So, like, if we can find stuff on people, like, how are
did
they
they
not?
not?
Yeah. And I think
I
that's
feel like,
the point.
yes, this is coming up also, I feel like, in the Bravo universe, about, like, how do these people get on the show? And then, like, all this dirty laundry from their past comes out. Like, Jen Shaw going to prison for, like, really bad fraud, which she's been convicted of. So we're not, like, she's
Speculating
been
here.
convicted. Yeah. Right. So, like, how does that happen? And I do believe another article that we'll link to in our show notes is a former cast member, Danielle, spoke out. I don't know if she's the one suing them or if she just spoke out in this article saying, after the fact, she feels like she shouldn't have been on the show, that she disclosed her own personal mental health history. She disclosed that she had previously attempted suicide, and feels like the whole experience was incredibly stressful for her and led to suicidal thoughts, and she regrets doing it. And again, it's like, how did she pass the psych evaluation? That's, like, what she's asking. So I'm really curious, like, what is the quote unquote psych evaluation? Who's doing it? How good is it? Or I feel like it's just a box to check to get people on the show. Like,
Right. And
I feel like they are also trying to make entertainment.
Right. And these people also want to be on the show. So, like, if you're asking me,
You could
are you ready for
lie.
love? Like, I'm like, yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I've wanted this my whole life. This is how ready I
Right.
am. Like, so I think
Right.
it's also even if we're using a good measure, or even if it's like a ethical, licensed practitioner doing these like psych evals, I guess, like there's still room. You're not seeing them over time, so you're not like catching,
Right.
things that don't add up, or like,
Mhm.
seeing what really happens in their life. Like you're just getting a little snapshot of them
Right.
where
And
they're
some
probably
people,
lying.
yeah, they can be really charismatic. They kinda know what you want them to say to get on
Mhm.
the show, right? So at that process, like after the 3 to 400 people they see on Zoom, first of all, like, wow, what talk about Zoom fatigue. They narrow it down to 60 or 70. And from there, they finally pick the final 30. And she says at that point, they're looking at the cast not only as individuals, but as an ensemble, as prospective couples. I feel like that would be fun to try, to
Yeah, like
try
a
to
little
predict.
matchmaking.
Yeah.
I
Like, try to
agree.
predict, like, how are they gonna get along? Like, all this stuff. Like, do they put them all in the room and, like, observe them like animals in the wild? Like, how do they do this, you
It's
know?
giving jury duty, and how they
Yes.
found, um,
Yes. Yes.
what's his name?
Ronald.
Ronald. Yeah.
Ronald, yes. Which sidebar, just for everyone to know, after our episode on jury duty, we did reach out to Ronald on Instagram, and he got back to us to let us know, like, he is doing okay psychologically. So
That's great.
that was that was really great to hear.
Yeah.
This was during the strike, and he also said he'd be interested in talking to us. However, since the strike has ended, he's like fully represented by like Hollywood
Big
people
time.
and is like doing things and has like a deal with Amazon. And unfortunately, it seems like we have fallen off his
Yeah.
radar. So we just want to let everyone know he did confirm he's doing okay. So that's great. I think some people from Love is Blind aren't doing as good.
No. And I think that's a good segue into like the editing.
Yes, the editing and the ethics of all this, right? Like even the reality shows like the Real Housewives franchise, I'm obsessed with. I don't think the editors have any legal, I was going to say, or ethical, but I think that's up to your opinion, obligation to show conversations exactly the way they happened. And I think that is why they use these
Yeah.
weird golden goblets. It's for continuity purposes.
Mhm.
So you
Right.
can't tell like if someone's drink is full or whatever, if they're changing drinks, like
Mhm.
so they can piece together conversations. Like I don't think every conversation we see, like I don't think the fights between
Right.
Jimmy and Chelsea happened exactly that way,
Right.
right?
And I
I don't think
heard
they're
on Giggly Squad for Hannah Berner and Paige Sorbo, they talked about on Summer House, how they're often, and I don't know if they do this for Love is Blind, but they have to give like the production company or who's ever editing it, like sends them lines to say. Like, 6 months later when the show's about, they say the lines and then they input them into like
oh
the
yeah.
show. So Hannah was talking about how she was like asking about, I don't know, I'm making this other person's
Oh,
name up,
that's
like,
so interesting.
where's Steven? And they put that in there. They dubbed it like 10 times. And everyone was like, Hannah's obsessed with Steven. And she's like, I never even said that live. Like, that was
She's
never
like,
even
"Who is
happened.
even?" She's like, "I don't
Right.
even know who that is."
Exactly. So I just think that like people can get terrible edits. I think
Oh
that
my god.
Chelsea has gotten a terrible edit. I'm not
Yeah.
confirming or denying any other judgment on her, but like she, I think they saw a storyline that, and they framed it as, she's this insecure person who's like
Yes.
clingy, in Jimmy's words, and they like edited it, I'm sure, to
To
support
look that
that.
way.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right, and it's like, at some point, they're also not just doing this altruistically out of the kindness of their hearts to help people find love, right?
Right.
Like, they do want to put out an entertaining show,
Mhm.
and the production company, all their jobs are also on the line to
Right.
keep the momentum going, and so they do edit these people into characters, I would think, right? Like, we actually probably have no idea what Clay's really like or Johnny's really like, like I think they do edit them to be these characters. And I just like, what do you think that must be like for the people on the show?
I think I can't imagine, no, like now I can't imagine going on a show like this. And
No.
because I think it's all out of your hands. And I think if you're
Right.
not an expert, like I'd say like, Hannah and Paige are like they like know they're acting now at this point. I think a lot of,
Mhm.
yes, it's their lives and absolutely there's real moments, but I
Mhm.
think they also like are paid, you know, well, and they know what they're doing. They know the prescription. They know how this works. But other people who I think are first time reality TV, you know, contestants come on, like they don't really know. And so I think that that's almost feels to me sometimes like criminal. And I know that that maybe feels like
Yeah.
kind of an aggressive word, but I don't know. You know, it's like you leave all of this on the table and then you walk away and then you're watching it with everyone else. You know, they've
Yeah.
posted about it. I've seen like their TikToks and stuff. And I mean, man, oh man, the comments like that
Oh,
specifically Chelsea received on posts like, you know, you're terrible, you're like you're the worst, you're so annoying, thank
yeah.
God, like, you know, I hope you guys break up before they do. Like it was just terrible.
Yeah.
Obviously then her looks came into account with
Oh,
the
the Megan
Megan Fox
Fox
date.
thing.
So
I
I
can
don't know.
see
I think it's
it.
criminal.
But she also was like honest. She's like, well, I have dark hair and light eyes, so sometimes I get Megan Fox. She wasn't like, I look just like Megan Fox,
I
you
think
know?
she definitely I think that's a very accurate like celebrity lookalike. I think, you know, from like
Yeah,
her
I think so
her
too.
the top half of her face is Megan Fox. And if she had, you know, more work done, like I think they could be identical twins.
Yeah. Did you ever, when I remember a segue, when I was in college on Facebook, there was like this quiz that was like, who's your celebrity doppelganger? Do you know who I got?
No.
I got a male actor named Jeff Daniels. Do you remember him?
No, but I just love that.
He was in like, what was he in? He was in like this movie about, I think it was called Fly Away Home, about like ducks
Oh, the
flying
ducks.
away.
Yeah,
Do
I
you-
remember that movie.
he's he's my celebrity doppelganger. I think
That's
he was in Dumb
hilarious.
and Dumber. He's the guy in Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey. Like that's what Facebook thought I looked like. So anyway, that's what I'd have to say in the pods.
I think
I
that's
don't think
also
I'd get
funny. But then I was just going to say, I don't think you'd get picked.
no.
But I didn't like that they
Ah,
said that. Like, I think, you know, Clay, which again, I think there's always
mm,
an important factor. Of course, like physical attraction is important. Obviously, the point of the show is to get the connection first and then hoping that the physical connection follows. And I think for some people, like they're not used to that. They're typically going off
mhm,
of really just, and I think most people are like, we see them and we, you know, approach or not. Sometimes
yeah,
that's, you know, not good, which is again the point of the show. So I think like in
mhm,
terms of Clay, it seemed like he had a pretty hard time, like kind of trusting that what is the AD gonna look like? She sounds really cool, and he was kind of like asking
mhm.
for her to give some hints.
I was
I
proud that
loved
she
she.
didn't.
I know I was really happy for
Because
her,
she
kind of holding
could.
her ground. Hmm.
Yeah, she totally could have.
Yep.
Um, and like there was another contestant in a former season who also was asking women like, how much do you weigh? And that stuff is like
Yes, I remember that.
icky.
Hmm.
Um, and it's like not the point of the show, right? So
Right.
it's like really confusing. But I also think it speaks to how human that is,
Hmm.
and that physical attractiveness is part of falling in love. Like that is
Right.
part of the process. I wanted to ask you, like, what do you think about their use of the word experiment to describe this whole thing?
Mm. I
Like they didn't
almost
get IRB approval
no.
to like do a scientific study here.
I I almost took it as like in order for them to give up, like what you do with though consent and trusting that you're not going to be harmed. That's why we have an you know the review board that reviews all of
Right.
these things. But like
Internal Review Board, IRB.
I think that they almost use that word to like get like a get out of jail free card. Like it's an
Yeah.
experiment. So like like the production like we don't know. Like this is an experiment. And then I think everyone
But
going in is like willing to kind of buy into this quote unquote crazy idea. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not thinking about it in the way that you are. So say more.
well, I think my wheels are just turning about like the ethics of this whole thing because it's not an experiment. Like you didn't go to the NIH or the FDA
Mhm.
or like an IRB review board to say like I want to study this. This is the intervention. These are the two arms of the trial. Let's see what happens. Let's follow them up over the next year and check in, see how they're doing. Like when we say the word experiment in the scientific community, it actually means something. And there
Mhm.
are ethical obligations, especially when you use humans, right? Like you can't just
Right.
experiment on humans. Um, what they're making is a TV show. This is for
Right.
entertainment. And so I just wonder, is that one of the things where they're like, you have to use the word experiment? I think it
I
gives
think
them
so.
like quote unquote credibility, but like you
Mhm.
said, also like lets them off the hook in a way they probably shouldn't be let off the hook. I'm dying to know what are in the contracts for the people on the show. Do they get paid? Is there an NDA?
So I think you
How
get
much do they sign away? How much of their rights do they sign away to be on the show?
probably, well, we know that they don't get their phones until they're outside of the pods, which to me feels like, what did Jess do with her daughter? Like, was she just not allowed to talk to her? Or
Yes.
was there an exception? Like, there was a specific phone line, you know what I mean? And a producer was like, here, like, that's nice, but like, they should do that. Like, that's
There
weird to
has
just
to,
like
but
ghost
there,
your
yeah.
family.
Yes, yes. Yes, and the ethics of them just like being in the pods. Like there's no windows that I
I
can
know.
see. Like they
Just
don't
the
know what
thing
time of day it
above.
is. Just the weird thing above that we can see into. But
Hmm.
like how long are they in the pods? How long are they doing these dates? Like
Well, you know what
are
I think is
there
funny is that how, and I appreciate people dressing up. I like to dress up. I
oh my
appreciate
god,
it,
me
but
too.
like,
But like when no one's looking.
exactly. So like, that's for the
Well, I
show.
guess
Like, you want
America's
to look
looking
hot. Yeah, exactly. Like,
for
but
the
there's
show.
that
Yeah.
fame piece that like I
Right.
think you can't take out from anyone on the show. So like, everyone
Especially at
there,
this stage. Like
exactly.
season 1, they had no clue. Like
That
those
it
I
was
feel like
even
are
going
the
to
most
air.
genuine. Right.
Hmm.
Those are the most genuine of the genuine, and that's why 2 of the couples are still happily married. It seems happily, like that's a
Yeah.
judgment call, but they're still married, at least per my social media perusal. But yeah, like but Portia, like, what do you think of the ethics of that? Like, can you imagine approaching like a hospital IRB and being like, listen up. I want to do this experiment where I'm going to put like 30 people in these like windowless rooms and dictate when they eat, when they don't eat,
Give a
cut
lot
them
of
off from
alcohol.
communication from the outside world. It's like, it is kind of like the show Jury Duty or like real jury duty if you get sequestered.
Hmm.
Um, but like, it's just weird to me. Like, but I think that adds to the stress.
It is a setup, I think. And especially, you know, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm going to say this throughout the entire episode, but like, I think that the to me, because we can't see in the cups, but like the clear use of alcohol, the alcohol that's even in the pods, like we see the bottles again, maybe it's
Mhm.
for show, but like you
And they
see
had like
a Love
Love is
Bar.
Wine. Oh, this is like Love
Yes.
is Wine.
So there's a lot of alcohol use. And so, and you're in this confined space competing for people. Like, you know, there was a couple, you know, love triangles or
Mhm.
quads that happened. And it's like, it just, it just feels really icky in that way. That's what feels dangerous to me. It's like you're putting all these people in a competition where they can't leave, they can't talk to their support
Mhm.
system, and you're giving them
Right,
alcohol.
right. And you're like it kind of reminded me in some ways of like rehab, like when you
Mhm.
take someone out of their normal surroundings, bring them to a place to try to help them get better.
Yep.
But in that case, like you usually have access to all the things people in the pods don't have access to: sunlight, exercise, healthy meals, support groups,
Mhm.
individual therapy, like all these things.
Right.
And we know that the transition from completing a rehabilitation program back to your normal life is like a very high risk time because you're going from this very controlled in the rehab setting, hopefully supportive environment back home with all the stressors. But like in Love is Blind, you're like whisked away, but in this like artificial place
Right.
where you don't have sunlight. I feel like I think, and I read in one of the articles, like they sleep in like bunk beds and they're just like in the pods all day long, no matter what. How do you know what time it is? Like, we know that, like, if you put elderly people in a place like this, they would all get delirious
Mhm.
and there would be like significant psychiatric
Yes.
consequences. Who's to say that's not going to happen to younger
Right.
people? Do they have access to their medications? What if someone has like as needed medication for a medical or psychiatric issue? Are those people just like not in the experiment or do they have
Mhm.
access to it? What if like is there a phone line like you said for Jessica to talk to her
Yeah.
daughter or
Or were
I
they
have so many
chosen because of
questions.
that? And that's where I feel really interested in this like lawsuit about the background check and the psychological testing being brought up,
Mhm.
because I don't know if I know that someone has they're on medication. Like, I feel like they'd have to like disclose that. So like if I know someone is taking Latuda, or
Mhm.
Vraylar or something that's like a mood disorder. Like maybe if I want, and I'm being cruel here, maybe I'd want like them to be on the show because I think that they're a little moody. I think that they're maybe going to have a little drama. Like
Like if you were a
the
producer.
stuff exactly that
Yeah.
I'm like, is that happening? Because I
And isn't
feel like
that
it could.
exploitative?
Right?
Yeah, it feels
Yes.
exploitative. Or to
Yes.
bring Jessica, I'm dying to hear your thoughts about I think this is the first time there was someone with a child, and that made me feel really icky.
Hmm.
About you.
Yeah, I think I really want to know like the details of that. Like what was the contact like? Could there be any? Because if there wasn't, and I want to know how long also the filming was. Like because I think that's also something that I forget a lot about. Like this all takes place in like a
A week or 2 or
relatively
something.
short time. So like I think I need more details, but it does feel weird and not because she has a child and she's not entitled to finding her love and we're not being
No,
like
right.
discriminatory here, but like she's a mom and that a parent and that, you have a different role to fulfill that you usually can't just check out of
And
your
I
life.
and I think that is also setting her up because other people coming on the
Mhm.
show are I mean, it's already stressful enough to imagine committing to marriage in, like, the 1 month that you have
Right.
together. Now you're also committing to parenthood
Yes.
and of a 10-year-old, not of an infant or a 1-year-old or someone who you can, like, grow an attachment with from very early on, but someone who's already 10.
Yep.
Again, I feel like that's setting up Jessica, like, she was kind of exploited in that way to be, like, the mom, and it just makes me so sad that, like, she always would say, like, that's the thing that sorta gets in the way, is that when people find out she has a child, they're, like, not interested anymore, and then,
And we
like,
saw
it
that.
happened.
Yeah.
And it's again, it's like, is that just the way they edited it? Or did they kinda, like again, it's not like the producers know it's gonna happen, but I just feel like that's just setting her up, and also what about the effects on the child? Did anyone do a psych evaluation on the child?
Right, like, is she now and I mean, Jess seems like from her Instagram, it seems like they have a very sweet relationship.
Mhm.
Who really
Who
knows
knows
about
for real?
anyone?
Yeah.
But, I'm wondering too, like, I hope that her daughter's certainly old enough to, like, understand things, and I hope she doesn't blame herself either, like, at some
That's what
point.
I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I mean. She can watch the show and, like, those are the layers that feel like,
Mhm.
like, where is the ethical
Right.
line? Where is it, you
Yeah.
know? And how yeah, if they do these background checks, how did they not figure out that apparently JerAmey with an A, which that A should have been the first red flag, um, was engaged allegedly, and that Trevor was engaged or dated? Like, how'd they not figure that out? How?
Yeah.
I feel like this background check has just gotta be, like, the one you can
Time.
buy online when
Mhm.
you're looking into getting a babysitter that's
Right.
gonna tell you, like, if they're a convicted felon, but they
Right.
don't tell you all the other things. Like,
Right. No,
they only tell you if
exactly.
you got caught of something
Mhm.
really bad, you
Yep.
know?
I also saw that they are, I think their next location is going to be Minnesota, and a guy was speaking on TikTok about how he was, like, one of the people who was asked, he's, like, also Minneapolis or I think it's Minneapolis, is, like, a very small city, like, everyone kind of knows each other, and
Yes,
there's
they always
already
pick kind of small or they're getting
Yes.
smaller and
Yes.
smaller, which I think is
They should
interesting.
come to, like, West Hartford or something, or, like,
Or West
Westport.
Haven.
Yeah. They have a lot of,
Westport.
younger people there.
Yeah.
But I don't know, I mean, I just think that it is exploitative. I'm having a
Exploitative,
hard
yeah,
time
and I
saying that
mean
word.
no, but I think you're right, and also I think it gives all the contestants a false sense of security,
Yep.
and I think one of them, it might have been Jimmy even said, like, "Oh, it feels great knowing everyone's, like, been background checked, they have a psych eval," like, you're thinking you're getting, like, the most stable of the
Right.
stable, and it just goes to show, like, humans are wild
I
cards,
know.
you
And
know?
there's really I think, again, like, I don't think that I think the show can only do so much when we're looking at that. Like, this is a show. It's a show. It's not just,
It's for entertainment, right, they're
exactly.
not doing this isn't like a nonprofit
Right.
organization, like, trying to match people. This isn't like it's for entertainment,
Mhm. And for
right, and if they
money.
yes, and if they didn't have the drama or the
Mhm.
surprises, like, it wouldn't be getting the airspace, like, we wouldn't be talking about it probably.
Right. No, I agree. I agree. I think they need to do a better job. But this guy was saying that he's already been on a reality TV show, like not like a super popular one, but like they reached out to him like knowing that. And he's like, so now that to me feels like such acting. I know that I think I saw online that Trevor is already like on another reality show. He's already filming for another one, like another love thing. And it's like, okay, at this point, like that doesn't feel like you're looking for love. It looks like it's going to be a good show.
No,
You
but
want to
also
act
it's like,
like you're an
but then you
entertainer.
think about it like, okay, so like back in the day, like Flavor of Love, um, the one about like New York,
I loved that
even the
show.
ones where, do you remember the one back in the day on MTV where they would like room raiders or
Mhm.
where they'd go on the bus?
Yes. Yep.
So like, how is this different from those now?
I
I
don't
felt
think
like
it
in this,
is.
I don't think it is anymore. But I felt like in this season, at least, I didn't watch the last season, but I think I've seen the rest. It was the first time I remember them asking each other about how many Instagram followers do they have
Mhm.
and what was their social media like. And then it
Right.
seems like as soon as they were out of the pods, everyone got their phone and like looked up all the other people somehow. And I thought that was really interesting.
Mhm.
And again, would just breed insecurity.
Right.
How are you
Yes.
not so insecure in this experiment when you're like the stress is so high?
I know.
The
I mean,
pressure
that
is
makes
so
me think
high.
of like I can't think of anyone but Chelsea when you say that.
Mhm.
Based on, the bad edit that I believe, in my opinion that she got with like the storyline of Jessica. And Jessica, like this has
Yeah.
nothing to do with, Jessica doesn't need to be less pretty, but it's just like I think that there was this line throughout the story after they got out of the pods that like Jessica was this Kardashian looking, they said that
Yeah, and
like
you keep saying that over
woman.
and over.
And like, how, of course, is that going to make Chelsea feel that, like, knowing that, historically in our society, like, oh, the Kardashians are like so hot and like, you know,
Mhm.
on social media and Instagram and media. And then like Chelsea, like, does not look like Kim Kardashian and Jess does. And like that Jimmy was into her. And that's just what I feel like started it from the
Yeah,
beginning with Chelsea being insecure. And I don't think other
yeah,
people would not be. Like, to me, that felt somewhat appropriate. Again, given the context and me
yeah,
assuming that she had a bad edit.
yeah, I totally agree, and I think I just wanna clarify too that as we start talking about the actual characters, we are gonna try to think of them and refer to them as characters because we don't actually know what they're like for real
Right.
because of all the editing. Like, I think we'd be super naive to believe that everything we saw was exactly how it happened. I
Mhm.
think you had just told me before we started that the breakup between Brittany and Kenneth, like, happened off camera and they had to, like, redo it?
Mhm. That's
Is
what
that
people are saying.
that's what they're saying? Like, can you imagine?
No. No.
Like,
Because it came out of nowhere, right? Like, and I think you
I
had
was so
spoken about
shocked.
before with like it being, they're sequestered. It's this like everyone's in it together. You're all having the same
It's
experience.
like the Lord of the
Experience.
Flies meets, like, Millionaire Matchmaker or something.
It definitely gives that like vibe. There was a show
Mhm.
on Amazon Prime, The Wilderness, The Wilds, or something about all these girls that got like fake, um, stranded on an island, but they were
Oh
like being
god, like
filmed the
Yellow
whole
Jackets,
time.
but fake?
But being filmed. So like, yeah, exactly. It was like it was
They
an
didn't know?
experiment. No. And like
How
terrible things
how can you
happen.
do that to people?
Well, the
Are
so
they
the
okay?
no, and people like spoiler alert, I'm not saying who, but like people died, and the person doing it is like a
What?
rogue. They're a rogue psychologist like who is like really trying to get to this research, and obviously it didn't get approved, so she like goes rogue. That's the whole premise of the show.
People
And
died?
yes. It was a great show, like really exciting and entertaining. You should watch it. It's like, oh, there's only like 1 or 2 seasons. There's only
I
like
It's
6
real
episodes.
or it's a fictional
Oh, it's
show?
fictional show.
I thought, Portia, this was
No,
real.
no, 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 no. Fictional.
Oh, and
Yeah.
you're saying, like, it's a great show. It's like, are you not who I think you are? Have you fooled me this whole time?
Yes.
Okay, so
Exactly.
it's not a real show. Like, they didn't
No.
actually
No.
put these people in the
No,
wilderness and
no,
not
no, no,
tell
no.
them.
No.
Oh, okay, I thought they did.
No.
I was like, this is like jury duty, but worse.
Yeah, this is jury duty with like cannibalism, basically.
Oh god. Okay. Oh, I thought it was like a real Yellow Jackets, like for real.
Mhm. So if you haven't listened to that
Oh
episode,
god.
we do it with Dr. Jesse Gold. It's really good if
It
you've
was
seen the
wonderful.
show.
Oh.
But anyway, so Kenneth and
Oh.
Brittany, I think, were in that space where like they've had this really strong connection in this like sequestered space. And then when they kind of got out into the quote unquote real world, which was like the Dominican
When you,
Republic trip or whatever. Like that's when you started to see the awkward silences that again, like
I loved the
Netflix
awkward
edited
silence
it
that they
and
kept
maybe
in.
they happened, but like it was so it would like they
Awkward.
did it for a reason to show that this was
But
happening.
then also like, okay, why wouldn't it be awkward? Okay, like, this reminds me of, like this is like, back in the day you used to go in chat rooms, or maybe you
Mhm.
didn't, but, like,
Yeah. You weren't
and you would be
supposed
like,
to.
ASL,
Yeah.
ASL, and you'd, like, think you were talking to someone and, like, who knows who you're really talking to? And this reminds me of, like, is this what it feels to do online dating? Because that came
Mm.
after my time, thank God. But, like, is that what it feels like? But then it's like you have this relationship with a fantasy person
Yep.
and you're talking to them, but they're still like you're creating this whole fantasy in your mind
Yes.
of who they really are. And then you meet them, and that's the first chip at the fantasy. And it's like every single step along the way chips away at the fantasy you had in your mind, and you're grappling with the discrepancy between that fantasy and the reality. And we know in our line of work, that is where a lot of human distress lies.
Mhm.
Whether you're talking about perfectionism, anxiety, stress, like, I had a fantasy that I would get paid by the health insurance company I agreed to see patients for. And my reality right now is they're saying, like, no, in light of this healthcare data breach. And there's a lot of distress I'm feeling because
Mhm.
of that.
That's a great example. That's a great
Uh,
example.
but I think, like, we just see that start to chip away, but it's like, it's not realistic to expect that even if you talk to each other all the time in the pods for like a week, now you're just like ready to get married.
And that's where I do feel like at the end of the day, regardless of the characters that they played, I feel like I didn't appreciate how Clay, was smiling while she was saying yes at the
Yeah.
altar and then said no. Like I think he could have done that before. I'm sure he was lean
Like
I
Jimmy.
exactly. But I also can appreciate that, like, this is really fast. And even if you think you're ready, like, this is
Mhm.
fast. So, like, I
Yeah.
just, want to put that out there that I don't think it's wild for someone to kind of freak out, even if you have love and
Yeah.
connection for someone. I think that's, like, pretty typical and might happen to a ton of people, even if
That's
you
what, yeah,
were
people
in
get
the
cold
real world.
feet.
Exactly.
Right.
And we're dating for like a year, not 4, 6 weeks.
Right.
Like,
Don't you think it's probably more normal to have some questions and some worries on your wedding day than
yes.
to feel 100% sure?
Hmm.
Like, I haven't done that experiment or, like, surveyed the world to ask, but I would imagine it's far more common to feel super nervous about making that commitment that day.
Hmm.
No matter how well you know the person, how long you've been with them, it's just like a big commitment than to feel like 100% no doubts,
Yep. Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just that day is so stressful anyway. And yes, of course it's fun and lovely, but I think there's so much like I remember feeling like almost like, to use a therapy term here that I actually was not, but like manic that day, like pressured
Mm.
speech, like a million thoughts. Like I could not,
Yeah.
I
The
drank
stress is so
alcohol
high.
and I never felt drunk. Like, because I
Yeah.
was just like humming. I was like above the world. Like, and I think,
Yeah.
it's normal within that context also to just be like, oh my gosh, like, what am I doing? Is this really happening? Like, this is crazy.
Yes. It's so stressful. It's
Mhm.
so stressful. So then imagine doing that with someone you met 6 weeks ago.
Right. I can't.
Like, who wants to sign up for this?
I know.
Like,
How long were you dating before you got married?
7 years.
Yeah, I was dating, I think, 8.
Eh, yeah, it's a long time.
Hmm.
And I think we both, started dating our partners pre-dating apps,
Yeah. Yep.
right? Like, I cannot imagine using a dating app.
No.
I just can't. And this is like, is this supposed to be, like, better than a dating app or, like, the same as I don't know. It's just, like, so this whole thing is fascinating
It
to me.
is. It is.
So maybe I'll use this moment to segue a little bit. I wanted to bring in a little neuroscience because, I'm such a nerd and I love science. And I looked up some cool facts about what happens in our brains when we fall in love.
Mm.
And we'll link to this article as well in our show notes. But isn't it cool that there's people out there who like
There
study
is.
this? Like
Mhm.
for real, they do real experiments
Yeah. And what a
that
happy
do
job, It's like we're not studying,
hopefully, yeah.
like, sad things like we typically
sociopath or
do.
like, yeah. Um, So I specifically found a woman. Her name's Lucy Brown, PhD. She's a neuroscientist and professor of neurology at the Einstein College of Medicine in New York. There's others out there, but I'm just going to focus on her work. She is using fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, to basically see like what areas of your brain light up when you're in love versus not in love. So if you don't know what an fMRI is, it's an MRI, which is when you like lay in that machine that's super claustrophobic and it makes
Oh,
really loud noises,
mhm.
um, that uses basically magnetism to like show different parts of your brain. The functional part, the F part of the fMRI, means that they can see blood flow to different areas. So you basically see like what areas light up based on the stimulus the person's being exposed to. Like, first of all, how cool is that? Second of all, they did a study of 10 women and 7 men who were intensely in love based on their scores on the passionate love scale, a 14-item questionnaire designed to assess the cognitive, emotional, and behavioral aspects of passionate love that relationship researchers have widely used for decades. So we're also going to link to the passionate love scale in our show
Yeah, you
notes.
should take
Basically,
it.
I know. Do you want to take it?
Yeah, we should.
Okay.
About each
Um,
other.
yeah, I love that. So some of the questions are: sometimes my body trembles with excitement at the sight of, I guess, Portia in this
Mhm.
case. I would have to say not true. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
So basically, there's 14 questions, and it's a Likert scale, which means it ranges from 1 to 9, 1 being not true, 9 being like the most true, and it's subjective. So the person just picks like the number.
Mhm.
And some of the other questions I thought that I really liked was like, I have an endless appetite for affection from fill in the blank. Um, um, if I were separated from fill in the blank for a long time, I would feel
Mhm.
intensely lonely. I knowing that fill in the blank cares about me makes me feel complete. So it's just like, again, I really like interesting questionnaire, and they found that understandably, people who scored really high on this had like really intense, passionate, sometimes reckless love. People
Yeah.
who scored low had like kind of minimal love, maybe it's fizzling out. So they sort of gave people these questionnaires about their romantic partner to see where do you score, and then they looked at their brains using fMRI scans and which areas of the brain lit up when they were looking at pictures of their romantic partner versus pictures of like family or strangers. And so, interestingly, the parts of our brains that light up when we're feeling love is a very primitive part of our brain called the ventral tegmental area. It's in the midbrain portion of our brain. Some like pop psychologists refer to that as your reptilian brain, the parts of your brain that control things like appetite, sleep, breathing, these like basic human functions you need to survive. That also gets lit up when we feel love. So I thought that
Mhm.
was really interesting. Like, we are just wired for love as
Yeah.
humans. And then there's other areas of the brain that also light up. So areas of the brain that release dopamine, the feel good hormone that's in overdrive when people have addictions. The areas that release oxytocin or the cuddle hormone. Areas that release adrenaline, which leads to that feeling of euphoria. All of those things, so basically like the reward pathways of the brain involving the amygdala, the hippocampus, our prefrontal cortex are all like activated. Um, and so I just thought that was super interesting. Then there were other articles I read about something called mirror neurons, which is like
Yes.
super cool. Do you know
I
about mirror
love
neurons?
yeah, I do. I think they're so interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
We should do a whole episode on mirror neurons, right?
Mhm.
So basically, guys, mirror neurons are like these neurons in your brain that get activated, like, and then the neurons in the other person's brain get activated. You sort of mirror each other.
Yes.
And it's like this happens when people have children and
Mhm.
you're bonding with them. It happens in romance. It's why like some people finish each other's sentences, or how you can like move around your
Yep.
partner without needing to think of it. It's so fascinating,
It's like such
right?
an intense connection that is tangible, it's like
Yeah.
concrete. It's not just like
So cool.
subjective. Yeah.
So cool. So, and again, it's like, why doesn't Love is Blind put
Mhm.
people in fMRI scans if we want to be really scientific about experiments? But anyway, I just thought that was interesting. And to think about like, how are all their brains lighting up when they're talking in the pods and it's like
Mhm.
this fantasy versus in real life? I think this is like super fascinating to think about. Like, are their mirror neurons
Right.
working or not? Like, I'd actually like to do that experiment.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be a cool, like, extra piece, and especially in that controlled environment. I mean, like, they have a
Yeah.
lot of control in the pods that it could happen. It's definitely like
Yeah.
feasible.
But again, I feel like some of the control is problematic. Like it would lead to more stress response, maybe even a
Mhm.
trauma response to feel like contained.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like being contained, but
Right. So,
maybe for a
you
certain dollar amount, though, I'd be fine with it.
do they get paid to be on the
They
show? Do you
do,
know?
and they
They
do get
do.
more money if they
The longer they're on?
yes, which I find could
Problematic.
be that layer of, like that's what's hard to tell with these people who I think that's really helpful, the lens of, like, they are characters because you can't
Yeah.
tell me that that's not influential. Because and that doesn't mean, you're a bad person, that doesn't mean you're great, like, if there's thousands and thousands of dollars on the line,
Do you know how much they get paid?
I think it's like a $50,000 difference.
Really?
Yes. Like, it's significant.
Wow. So that also feels exploitative
Yes.
and coercive. That's the word
Mhm.
I'm looking for, right? Like,
Yeah.
wow, so that really gives me, like, insight into because I've always wondered, like, why do these people, like, go to the altar and put each
Mhm.
other through all this if they're gonna say no? Just, like, tell them the night before or break it off, like, at least Jimmy did, Brittany and Kenneth did. Um, and I always wondered, like, why don't people do that? And now
Right.
that's probably why.
Mhm. Yeah,
Oh, how icky that must feel.
and then I think so that makes me think of and I know we're gonna briefly talk about some of the characters, but, like, that does make me think about AD and what she said, after Clay said no in,
Yes.
like, the get ready room where she was like, "I feel
Mhm.
like you had this process where you learned a lot about yourself, but, like, you used me. Like,
To
I
do
was
it.
just,
Yes.
like, an object that, like, you used
Yes.
in your process."
Yes. I found that whole all of their dynamics in the again, this is so highly edited, but it was just really fascinating, and I also really felt for Clay's mom when she was talking to his dad at the end saying, like, she learned things about their relationship she never knew, and I feel like she was alluding to the fact that the dad brought him with him when he would cheat on the mom. Like, guys, don't do that.
Well, and my
Like,
question
don't
is,
bring
like,
your kids if you're cheating.
Right. Clay signed up for the
Don't do that.
show. Clay is being compensated. Clay made the decision to do this. And I'm sure, like, a family could say, like, "No, I don't wanna be on the show." Like, absolutely, but, like, I
Other
just
families have in the past, yeah.
right. But, like, she's not being paid, and they had and
Right.
again, maybe they agreed, and that's fine, and I hope they did, but, like, they put out some really vulnerable information about their
Yes.
family, and it's like, the
Right.
mom and dad weren't compensated for that.
Right. Right.
I'm not
And it's
judging in the sense of, like, you should or you shouldn't, but, like, I think that's just big information that to for Clay, reportedly was very heavy, like, that was a big part
yeah.
of his whole story, and I don't know, like, I hope
But
he
then it's
feels
like
okay sharing it now.
right, but now it's like, was it heavy or were you using it to further some storyline to, like, get press and visibility on your businesses since you're such
Mhm.
an entrepreneur? I mean, they kept cutting to the
Right.
name of his business and his water sports company, and he was wearing the hat, and, like, are people just going on this show for self-promotion? Um, and how much of that is at, like, AD's expense?
Mhm. And I think that
It
there's no way to know, like, there just
there's no way to
isn't.
know, but I really felt so sad for her. She looked heartbroken, like, genuinely heartbroken, and I just, like again, the way it's edited, I felt like it was, like, their attachment wounds coming out,
Mhm.
and I'm like, would that still have come out if they had just given the relationship more time
Right,
and
right.
not felt this pressure? But then it's like, she was so clear to him, like, "I'm not gonna stay with you if you say no," and then he thought she would. Remember?
I know. I did not like the ending scene for that. I felt like there's cameras there. I felt like he was very uncomfortable with her
Saying,
being
"I wanna go
upset
home."
for him breaking her heart, and, like, he did, like, I don't know, and, like, be accountable for that, like, sometimes we do
Right.
that, like, sometimes I mean, every time there's a breakup, typically, somebody is a little bit more surprised than the other person, and,
Yeah.
like, somebody's getting more hurt, like, that's normal, so, like, to not he it seemed like he could not tolerate that she wasn't just like, "Oh, yeah, like, it's fine, like, don't worry about it." He, like, asked for a hug, and I was like, "ED, don't
But then
do
it's
it,"
like
but she did it, like, I don't know.
and that's where I'm like, if they're gonna do this show, why aren't they going all the way and having cameras on them 24/7?
Right.
like Truman Show style, right? Because I feel like there's so much going on that the cameras don't capture. Like, I want to know, what are they talking about the night before the wedding?
Right.
Like, I would be like, hey, like, you want to say no tomorrow, but we'll keep dating? Like, you want to do that? Okay,
Right.
cool. Let's do that, Or like, is there a game plan? Like, what? Because they always go into it and they spend 20 minutes of each person in the couple talking about how much they love each other and they can't wait to get married. And then one says no, and we're all blindsided. I'm just like so confused. But she said that to him. She said she wouldn't do that. So was he just
I
not
know.
listening to her?
And the editing
I
again,
don't
like
know.
the whole day, like the wedding day, he's like, she's the one, like
That's what I
I'm so
mean.
excited. And then like so did you mean that, or like
Were you
did you
lying?
not? Or was it edited
Right.
weird? Like that's what I mean.
Right.
Like there's no way for us to know that. Like maybe he was saying kind of back and forth, and thinking, and they just edited it to be more dramatic. Like that's an absolute possibility.
And they could totally take clips.
Mm-hmm.
Like if, like if you are filming someone for a whole day, I'm sure at some point he said, I'm so excited, like to see my dad. Like, like it
Right.
could be he's excited, like, oh my God, I'm so excited. There's sandwiches here.
Mm-hmm.
It could be like totally unrelated.
I know. I was really happy with the boundaries that AD and
Yeah,
Laura set. That it was
too.
just like a no. Like this is an
Yes.
experiment. You're already like kind of messing up here, JerAmey. Like I'm not moving forward with you.
JerAmey.
And he just couldn't like understand that he couldn't tolerate that. There was some like, you know, different perspectives being given out when he was talking to her, when he was talking to his mom. I love that his mom
Mhm.
called him out still and was like,
It was
"You're lucky
like,
I
"You're
wasn't
lucky it
there."
wasn't me."
I
Yeah.
know.
But he's trying to tell her, like, he's wanting her to be like, "Right, mom?"
Right. Yep.
She's like, "That's awful to, like, be
Right.
with another girl till 5:30 in the morning, like, and you think she's gonna stick around." But, unfortunately, I think there would be some women who would,
I know. And
right? If
they
you
might
have
be used to that. Like, and I think it was
Yes.
so, and I think it seemed like on the show, JerAmey was so taken aback that Laura like wasn't having it. And then even at the lake party, like I think he was just like expecting her to be fine and them to be friendly. And he's like, what did he say at the lake? He was like, well, I just want it to be like fine for all the other people. And she's like, it's not about
Yes.
the other people. Like, why do you care? This is for love. This isn't a show to get friends. And I was just like, yes, girl.
America's
Like,
Watching, as
yep,
another early contestant would say, and
yep,
I think, like, these are the sorts of comments which, again, like, we're not analyzing these actual people. Again, this could all be edited, but these are the sorts of things where, like, if you come across it in your real life, like, your ears should perk up. These should be red flags. Like, I think, hopefully it's clear that
yeah,
if your fiance is out with another woman till 5:30 in the morning, that's a huge red flag no matter what. I was really proud of Laura for just cutting it off
hmm
then, despite all the pressure and
yeah,
stress of the whole thing. And I felt like whatever his explanations were, like, none's going to be good enough. And like, rightfully so
yeah, and
for
not
her.
saying like, oh, it's okay, yeah, like we'll be friendly here, like holding her line and being like, no, like
Right.
I'm allowed to not like you, like
Right.
I don't
Because of
need
what
anything
you
from
did.
you, exactly
Right.
what
Right.
you
Because of
did.
what you did. And I think it's interesting that in reality shows like this, when you're starting to see people confront each other about bad behavior or behavior that's inappropriate or crosses a line or hurts someone else, when the person who's displaying or doing the bad behavior, like, doesn't show a lot of remorse, that should be a red flag.
Hmm.
Like, let's all just keep in mind that that should be a red flag. And when they try to, like, spin it and,
Right.
say to you, like, "Well, like, you're kinda overreacting here," like, that's what we call gaslighting. Like, that's legit gaslighting.
Hmm.
That's legit,
Making you
and I
feel
do
crazy, right?
Right, and I do feel like we saw that a lot this season. I feel like with, like, AD and Matthew, with Chelsea and Jimmy, Laura and JerAmey, like, we were seeing this stuff everywhere, and again, maybe it's all highly edited or maybe not.
Hmm. Yeah,
We don't know.
I think it's hard to tell, but I just go back to like it's not again a good or a bad person going on these shows, but like there is an ulterior motive, and there's gotta
Mhm.
be again, even if it's only 5% of you, there is an ulterior
Mhm.
motive because there are matchmaking services. Like I
Right.
mean, there are like dating apps, and absolutely, I know there's a lot of fatigue. Like I work with a lot of people who, are in the dating
Yeah.
age, and like it sucks. It's hard, but like to go on a show, you also are doing it for like the story, the fun,
The
and like, yeah, you
attention.
hope it's a good time. Of course, you
Yeah,
hope to get something out of it, but like, I don't know, think of The Bachelorette. It's like if you're number 2 and you don't get picked, you're the next bachelor. Like, that's
right.
how it works. So I want my own show. I wanna be the star. Like, that's just I think we can't ignore that process. So it's like everyone going in had a level of desire to be famous, to promote a business, to
Mhm.
promote their Instagram, to be liked, right?
Well,
America's
yeah,
watching. Exactly.
yeah. And like it almost sounds like you're saying without saying that I would imagine there's a higher percentage of narcissistic traits amongst people choosing to go on a show like this compared to the general dating pool
Mhm.
who's not doing it in public with eyes on them, dressing up for the cameras, hoping to get followers, promoting a business, right? Like,
Right. And I think the
right? Like,
people who don't have the traits almost to me seem to get hurt more on the show. And the
of
people who do
course.
have the traits like go farther, like they do increase and I think it's because they almost like in a way are going on like as an actor. Like I'm going on for
Yeah.
another reason, so I'm not going to be vulnerable.
Well,
And the people
that
who
it sounds
are
like
get hurt.
yeah, I mean, to that portion, it sounds like now you're speaking to like some sociopathic traits where it's
Mhm.
like, we've talked before about how you sort of like see a lot of CEOs, maybe of the health insurance companies who are screwing us all over right now, have these sociopathic traits because you don't care as much, if at all, when others get hurt as
Mhm.
you're getting ahead.
Mhm.
Right? And that sometimes, like, leads you to then lead these companies because you can make these decisions and not pay
Right.
the hardworking professionals who are doing all the work, not like we have any personal experience with that at the moment, because you're not bothered.
Right.
Whereas other people like AD are so bothered.
Mhm.
And I just really feel for her because, like, she had spoken before about, the lack of her father. And and seeing her in the car at the end where she's like, why am I just not enough? And I just want to hug her
Yeah,
and be like, girl,
you
you are
are.
more than
Yeah.
enough. You haven't found the right guy. And like, God, I want to do some boundary work with her.
And, like, I wanna help always people with their picker, because I think a lot of
Yes.
people tend to from childhood, like, we are drawn
Excuse
to certain
things.
people,
Mhm.
and sometimes those people are bad for us over and over and over
Right.
again, and, like,
Right.
that it's hard it takes a while, it's a lot of work to do. Sometimes you have to go for someone who you're like, I don't like them at all," and, like, sometimes that it works out, sometimes, yeah, it doesn't, but, like, it's a lot of trying, and I think that it seems like AD ended up with her typical kinda guy. And I think what
Yeah.
happened happens again, and that's no shade to Clay, but I think I would have liked to see AD with someone who was, like, so different. Like, he was so
Mhm.
attractive, like, he gave off this energy,
Charming.
charming, and I think, that's probably her vibe, and,
Yeah.
I'd love to see all of them in more secure relationships after doing some soul searching.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So a lot for us to unpack.
Yes.
I feel like we could talk forever and ever and ever. Last thing I just wanted to mention was I was really happy to see some like I was really happy to, even though it's Jeremy, but to see CPAP,
Yeah.
like on our screens to like give everyone an idea of what it actually looks like
Mhm.
these days and that anyone can have sleep apnea.
Yep, normalize
That's
it.
something I'm normalizing it. And that's something I screen like all my patients
Mhm.
for because it can lead to symptoms of depression and anxiety. So it's just I was happy about that.
Mhm.
Amy and Johnny, I did love them as a couple. I really did. They're super worried about getting pregnant. And I just want to mention like vasectomies are not always reversible. Like kind of like it's more often they're not reversible than that they are. And there's a lot of other birth control options that they could talk about. So it just made me really curious
Yeah.
about why they didn't know about this stuff yet at their age.
They need to do some
Um,
family planning with a
yeah, some
professional.
family planning. Yeah, exactly. And I thought we saw a lot of interesting, background commentary on like how we're all addicted to our phones. And
Mhm.
again, that could have totally been editing, but it was interesting to see how
Yes.
engaged these people were before they got their phones, and then how once the phone was introduced, it led to lots of
Yeah.
issues, whether it's because they were looking someone up on Instagram or they're not listening to their partner. It's just really interesting.
I think too
And
it's
Kenneth loves dolphins.
yeah. Yeah, that was hilarious. Even since like COVID, because we're thinking about how the show, in the seasons has kind of changed. I feel like everyone on the show really spoke to how we access too much work, like how we're always
Yes.
available, the emails, working from home. I love working from home,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong, but like I think our
I
boundaries
don't.
are so loose that it's
Yeah.
really hard to like turn
Turn it
off
off.
work.
I
Hmm.
noticed that even about myself, like where I'm like checking my email at like 7 p.m. and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Like who's reaching out to me? And if they are, why do I need to look at it now? It's just this like, again, that dopamine hit in our brains, that reward
Hmm.
circuit. So it's just really
It's
interesting.
like something to do
Any fun?
instead of, I think, going
Yeah. But it's like,
to take a walk. I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna check my email."
but like, why? What do we get out of
I don't
email?
know.
We're not getting alerts about this Change Healthcare data breach. I
No,
can
we're
tell you
not.
that. Anyway, Portia, any other final thoughts?
No, I think we covered it all. We're excited to watch the finale, and maybe I'm thinking, before thinking, but, like, maybe we'll
Or the
try to
reunion, you
release
mean?
some, yes, the reunion. Maybe we'll try to release, like,
Like a short episode?
short, episodes or just even some clips on, like, TikTok or Instagram about our thoughts if we
Yeah.
feel, like we want to. But stay tuned.
Yeah. And follow us on Instagram, TikTok. You can watch this episode on YouTube, see our golden goblets, although you
Mhm.
already know what they look like, at Analyze Scripts Podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We'd love to hear if you have any other questions about what you saw on the
Yes.
screen. We're happy to answer those. Maybe do another episode if we get enough questions. So let us know
Mhm.
and catch us next time.
Bye.
Bye.